morning, everybody. We're ready to start. Thank you, Deanna. I'd like you to stand so we can do the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'd like to thank everybody for taking time out of their day to come today. I'd like to introduce you to Brandy Snowden. Snowden is the NAR Director of Member and Consumer Survey Research and is part of the Survey Research and Communications Group. She assists with the production and dissemination of survey research reports, as well as focusing on digital, social media maintenance, and content creation. She also serves as a liaison between the internal research department staff and the non-member/consumers. Brandy has a master's degree in urban and regional planning from Georgetown University and a bachelor's degree in sociology from St. Mary's College of Maryland. I'd like you to welcome Brandy.
Good morning. It's great to be here this morning with all of you. Again, I'm Brandy Snowden. I work out of NAR's DC office on our research team. I'm happy to be able to share some of the work that our team is doing throughout the year. I know you have heard from some other NAR staff members recently, so just being able to share what our team is doing. I work on mostly survey research in our research team, so some of the public facing reports, looking at consumer trends in home buying, lots of surveys to our membership, so if you are receiving those, because we do send out a bunch of surveys, we always appreciate everyone who's able to respond to those so that we can share all this great information. So I'll be going over a couple of different topics in my research, so looking at some data from our housing statistics team, and then also diving deeper into some of those survey research trends. So I'll also make my slides available, so just in case you can't see them or you want to look further into the data, because I know it's early in the morning, but I think this is all super interesting, so I hope you do too. So I just want to start out with some of our housing statistics from our research team.
1 second.
So on a monthly basis, our team is releasing existing home sales, pending home sales, housing affordability, data releases. So this is from our latest existing home sales data release. So looking for the month of March, we saw that existing home sales did decrease by 3.6% on a month-over-month basis to an annual rate of 3.98 million. And looking year over year, we saw that this was a 1% decrease in existing home sales. And looking, we also have this data available on a regional basis. So we saw that in the Northeast, home sales did decrease by 8.5% on a month-over-month basis. We also look further into some inventory nationally. So we see that there is a 4.1 month supply of unsold inventory currently in this latest data release. We also look into the median prices of these existing home sales. So again, in March, we saw that the typical existing home was going for $408,800. In the Northeast, we saw that it was a little higher at $494,500. We see that in the Northeast, that price is up about 5.7% from a year prior. And then along with that data release, we also have some survey data that we include with this news release. So this is from our Realtors Confidence Index report. So this is a survey among our membership that we send out on a monthly basis. We ask them about their transactions from the previous month. So we look at lots of different factors in that, but just pulling out some of those highlights are looking at the share of first-time home buyers, sales to investors, all cash sales, distress sales, and then also the typical days that a home is on the market. So looking at that first. And those bars are comparing to 1 year prior. So we see that for first-time home buyers, it's actually the same as 1 year prior. And our membership was reporting that 32% of their recent sales were to first-time home buyers. You'll hear about first-time home buyers again very shortly. So we're able to compare some of this membership data to our consumer data when we look at first-time home buyers especially, as well as cash sales. So we see that sales to investors in this latest data was at 18%, so up a little bit from a year prior, where those cash sales is at 27%, again up slightly from a year prior. Distressed sales remain pretty low at 2% this month, compared to just 3% a year prior. And then looking at the typical days that a home was on the market, we saw that it was at 41 days in March, so up from 34 a year prior. So again, this is part of a larger report that you can look further into. And again, we're releasing that on a monthly basis at the same time as those existing home sales that are released. So I also wanted to share from our chief economist, Lawrence Yoon, his current forecast. So right now, he's forecasting for 2026 for existing home sales to increase by 4%. Looking at those existing home sales prices, he's also expecting those to increase by 4% as well. And then looking at mortgage rates, he's expecting for 2026 for those to be around 6.5%. So he is updating this throughout the year, so see how that changes. And moving on to some of our recent home buyers and sellers data. So again, this is part of a report that we release on an annual basis, usually around November. So we survey recent home buyers and recent home sellers about all different aspects of their recent housing transaction, from demographic characteristics, types of homes that they're purchasing, how they're financing that purchase, working with an agent, or just trying to sell this house by themselves. So this is one of our largest reports that we release. Also one of my favorites. And from this data, we're able to produce a couple spin-off reports as well. One of them was just recently released earlier this month. This is our generational trends report. So we take all of that same national data and break it down by generation, and we're able to see some generational differences in home buying. So looking at just the overall generations from our latest data, we continue to see that baby boomers were making up the largest generation of home buyers. This is kind of what we expected to see, especially from our national data and looking at those trends. But we see that baby boomers made up 42% of all recent home buyers. We saw that the share of millennials actually decreased down to 26% in our latest report. For Gen Z, we see that they're making up about 4% this year. Gen X is at 25%. And then for the silent generation, they're making up about 4%. So unchanged from last year for both baby boomers and also the silent generation. So again, we have another full report of great information that is available to all of you. All of our reports are now available free to all members, so I definitely recommend taking a look at that. But I'll go further into some of the national trends that we're seeing. So you'll notice throughout the next couple of charts, we're seeing some all-time highs and also all-time lows in our most recent data. So one of the big things that we saw was an increase in the median ages of recent home buyers. So we saw that those actually reached all-time highs. So we have lots of great trend lines also in this report. So for the typical first-time home buyer, we see that that age went up to about 40 years for the first-time home buyer. For repeat home buyers, up to 62, and then looking at that share of all home buyers, up to 59. So see across all buyers, they're older than we had ever seen since we began tracking this data. And then along with that, we're looking at the share of first-time home buyers. So again, we saw an all-time low in that share. So down to just 21% this year. Again, this is the lowest that we've seen since we began tracking this data. We see that especially those first-time home buyers are really having a lot of difficulties entering the home ownership market. They're facing limited inventory, housing affordability challenges. They're having a hard time saving towards their down payment. We also see that they might need to save for a longer period of time before they're ready to purchase their first home. We also asked in the financial section about some of the things that might be delaying them from purchasing their first home. And they're continuing to cite high current rent payments, car loans, student loan debt still successful and able to make that purchase. They might just be doing it in different ways than we've previously seen. So saving for a longer period of time. We're also looking into how family might play a role in helping them get into home ownership in this report. I will mention I am a very recent first-time home buyer, so we're just in February, my husband and I purchased our first home. And I waited longer than I wanted to, but we did get there eventually. So also looking at some of the household compositions from our recent home buyers. Again, this is one of our longest running reports, so we have lots of great data to compare. So even going back to 1985 compared to 2025. So again, we're looking at the household composition. We see that single women have continued to outpace single men in home buying. We also see that when we look just among first-time home buyers, that single buyers that share is even higher. Both single men and single women were most likely to say that they're moving just because they desire a home of their own. They're also looking to be closer to friends and family. And when we look at, we see that married couples are still making up the largest share of recent home buyers. This year they made up 50%, 25% for single women. We do see that the share of unmarried couples, looking back to 1985, has been continues to increase, making up 11%. In this latest data, single men are right behind them at 10%, and then this other category that we have in the report could include roommates. So it's another option for maybe friends to purchase a home together to be able to get into home ownership. Next, looking at multi-generational home buyers. So this could include houses that house elderly relatives, adult siblings, adult children in the home. So we saw that back in, actually just last year, we saw an all-time high of multi-generational home buyers at 17%. This year, that did come down just slightly to 14%. Looking at some of those top reasons that buyers are choosing to purchase a multi-generational home, we see that they're looking to take care of aging parents. They're also looking for that cost savings that's involved with having multiple incomes and pulling together incomes to split some of those household expenses. We also see that they might have adult children moving back into the home. From what I've heard around the room, we also might have some children that have never left the home, so you're looking for a larger home to maybe accommodate all of those people. So we also see that for first-time home buyers, the share is a little bit higher. So again, this is another way for them to enter home ownership with their family and their support with them, especially due to some of those higher costs that they might be facing getting into home ownership. So looking at this next chart, so this is looking at the share of buyers who reported having children under the age of 18 in the home. So we're also seeing that that was at an all-time low this year. So we see this dropped down to just 24%. Back when we first began tracking this in 1985, that was at 58%. So we see that this drop could be due to a couple of different things. So again, for all at birth rates, we see that those are down across the country. We also, from what you saw in the share of first-time home buyers at an all-time low. So on the opposite of that, repeat buyers are making up a larger share of recent home buyers who tend to be older, from what we saw in the median ages, and less likely to have children living in the home with them. So looking at the locations that our buyers are choosing to purchase in, we continue to see that the suburbs and subdivisions are making up the largest share. So you'll also see in these next couple of slides that back in 2022, we did see some pretty big shifts. One of them was looking at the location that recent buyers were purchasing in. So we saw some decreases in the suburbs and subdivisions and some increases in the share of buyers who are purchasing in small towns and also rural areas. We see that they might have had more flexibility with their work schedules, working remotely, compared to in the last couple of years with return to office policies, maybe needing to move a little bit closer back to their offices. We do see that, again, suburbs and subdivisions are still making up the largest share. We did see that urban and central city areas were slightly elevated since 2022. We've also seen that in looking at median household incomes, those have also been increasing over the last couple of years, so buyers might be able to purchase closer to those city centers. Looking at the total distance, the buyers are moving between their previous home and their recently purchased home. And you'll see in 2022, there was that big increase in the median miles that buyers were moving. So all the way up to 50 from what we had previously seen, looking historically, which was typically just about 10 to 15 miles that buyers were moving. So again, they might have that flexibility. They're looking to move to those more affordable areas, being out greater distances than we had previously seen. But in the last couple of years, we've seen that that has gone down to just about 20 miles that buyers are choosing to move to their main home. We're looking at some different living arrangements for our recent home buyers. So this is specifically among our first-time home buyers. You see that looking specifically at that light blue area. So this is the share of recent home buyers who were moving into their home directly from living with a family member or a friend. And this is the combined share of paying rent and not paying rent to their very generous friends and family when they're living with them. But we see that back in 2022, we saw that there was an all-time high at 27% of those first-time home buyers who were living with a family member or friend prior to their home purchase. And again, this allowed those buyers to maybe pay down some of their debt before they made their home purchase, working with credit score, and of course save towards their down payment in ways that maybe other buyers didn't have that opportunity. So we do see that that's come down a little bit in recent years, but again, this is another way, especially for first-time home buyers, to maybe get into home ownership and have that extra support and that time to be able to save. So shifting just a little bit, just quickly, so this is looking at our member profile. So this is another annual report from our team, and we're surveying our membership and looking at all the different aspects of their businesses. And we asked one of the questions, again, this is another long and very interesting report in my opinion, but one of the questions that we asked our membership is what they feel was the most important factors that might be limiting clients from completing a transaction. So again, this data is from last year, so we're currently working on this year's report, but looking last year at some of the top answers. So they are given a longer list, but just some of the top answers. We see that housing affordability was at the top of the list. Last year, I guess there might have been an expectation that mortgage rates might come down, and then also a lack of inventory. So interesting to see what our membership is seeing in their experience. So going back to, again, those recent home buyers, we also asked them what they feel is the most difficult steps throughout the home buying process. So this is broken down by all buyers, first-time and repeat buyers. We see that among all recent buyers, just finding the right property to purchase was the most difficult step for them. We also see, especially for our first-time home buyers, they're saying that saving for down payment is very challenging for them. And then again, those first-time home buyers are just having trouble understanding the whole home buying process and the steps to go through, as well as all the paperwork that they are going through in the home buying process. So that's why they're looking to all of you for that help. And we see that among our recent home buyers, 88% were purchasing their home through an agent or a broker. Again, they're looking to their agent for that help throughout the home buying process, for that knowledge. Since they're having difficulty just finding the right home, they're looking for assistance with all the negotiating, price negotiations, and again, just finding that right home for them. So looking at some of the financial aspects of the home buying process. So this is looking at the typical down payment amounts among our recent home buyers. And again, since we see that buyers are tending to be wealthier, they're also able to put down more towards their down payment. But looking specifically at that bottom line is the share of first-time home buyers, and might be a little bit different than what you're expecting from what we historically, especially for those first-time home buyers, we see that they have been putting down at 10% or below since we began tracking this data in our latest report. We see that the typical first-time home buyer was putting down about 10% for their down payment. But again, this is the highest that we've seen since 1997, when they were putting down 9%. Among those repeat home buyers, we see that it is higher, and it remained at 23% this year. Again, those repeat home buyers did have that equity built up. And we see that also reflected in the share of all cash purchases. So we saw that this all-time high actually remained this year at 26%, same as what we saw last year. And in our survey data, we actually filter out all of the vacation and investment buyers. So this is just among those primary residence home buyers. And some of the factors that we think might be influencing this is, again, that larger share of repeat home buyers who have that equity built up. They're able to purchase their home in all cash, compared to maybe some of our other home buyers. So we're really interested to see if this trend is continuing. Looking at some of the down payment sources, so we see that, again, savings continues to be the top down payment source among all recent buyers. This chart is specifically looking at first-time home buyers and some of the sources that they are using, since they might have that savings built up already. They don't have that equity to put towards their recently purchased homes. So looking at that pay line, this is another trend that we've been seeing among those younger home buyers, first-time buyers, and also some of the younger generations in the generational trends report. And this is, again, that those very generous family and friends who may be giving them gifting or loaning them money towards their down payment. So this continues to be a trend. Something else that we're seeing in our latest data is that purple line. So this is using financial aspects. So this is combining a couple different things. So looking at the share of buyers who are using stocks or bonds, their 401k or pension, an IRA. And then we even see a small share that are using cryptocurrency towards their down payment. So we see that this is another way that those first-time home buyers are able to get their down payment. And then looking at that kind of short blue line. So this is something that I find interesting. This is a new answer choice that we put in about 2 years ago. So this is using community and government down payment assistance programs towards their home purchase. So we see that actually went up to about 6% in our latest data. So it's another way that first-time home buyers especially can get some assistance towards their down payments. We also saw that inheritance for first-time home buyers was at an all-time high. Lots of different ways that these first-time home buyers are able to meet it and get their down payment. Now looking at on the seller side, so we see that seller tenure actually reached an all-time high this year. It had previously been at about 10 years, and then this year we saw it increase up to 11 years. So we see that some of the top reasons that recent home sellers are making that change is to move closer to friends and family. They're also maybe looking for a smaller or bigger home, or they may have a change in their family situation. And then on the seller side, we see that they're also looking to work with an agent to sell their home. We see that 91% of all recent sellers were working with an agent or broker to sell their homes. And then we saw that physical sales were actually down at just 5%. And again, those home sellers are looking to their agents, help them price their home competitively, help them market their home for sale, find a qualified buyer, or also maybe help them sell within a specific time frame. And I just want to include some questions that we get about maybe older sellers maybe they're actually downsizing when they purchase their new home. So we do see that among those that were aged 55 and older, we do see that they are downsizing a little bit. Maybe not as much as you would expect. From 55 to 74, they're typically downsizing by just about 100 square feet in size. And then for 75 and older, we think that they're downsizing by about 300 square feet. again, that, a lot of the data, we have further trends in the full report, and the profile of buyers and sellers and generational trends report, so you can take a look at that. I did want to shift over to another one of our reports, that you might be familiar with. I'm not sure, when Colette was here last time she went into this, but this is our snapshot of race and home buying report. So, I work on this with one of my colleagues, and we look further into some home ownership trends by race and ethnicity, and then also some of the obstacles that these buyers and homeowners are facing in their homeownership journeys. So this is looking at homeownership trends over the last decade, broken down by race and ethnicity. So we do see that over the past decade, homeownership rates have increased across all racial and ethnic groups, but we do see that some of those races and ethnicities homeownership rates are still lagging behind. We did see that the highest homeownership gains were among Hispanic Americans at increasing by about 6 percentage points. For Asian Americans, it was about 5.6 percentage points. The white homeownership rate increased by about 3.6%. And then we see that the black homeownership rate increased by about 2.8% over the last decade. So we do see that the black homeownership rate does still remain below 45%, which is below that of any other race and ethnicity. And then in this report, we do have lots of great state breakdowns. So I did pull some of the New York specific data, looking at, again, those same homeownership rates broken down by state. We see that the homeownership rate was highest for white Americans at 6% in New York, followed by Asian Americans at 53%, black homeowners at 33%, and then 28% for Hispanic homeownership rate. And in the report, we do have some great breakdowns looking at how realtors can apply this in their work. So that's always great resources. And we also look into some of the factors that are going into these homeownership rates, because again, we know that this will vary by state and region. So some of the factors that we see playing into that homeownership rate are looking at demographic factors, affordability, and then also access to credit. But looking at that next line, we look at the share of renters who can actually afford to purchase the typical home. And again, this will vary by state and what the typical home price is. We see that looking at New York, that it was Asian and white renters who are more likely to be able to purchase the typical home. And then looking at that next line is the share of home buyers in the 25 to 40 age group. So this is the typical home buying or first-time home buying age. So we see that was highest for Asian households at 31.8%. And then that last line is looking at mortgage denial rates. So again, looking down by New York, we said it was highest for Black and Hispanic applicants at 17.2%. But again, in the full report, we have it broken down by every state, so you're able to see how New York might compare. And then another chart in this report is looking at the share of current homeowners who are currently spending more than 30% of their income towards housing. So this looks maybe different than what you're thinking. So we see that current homeowners are also having housing affordability challenges. We see that in New York, it was highest for Black homeowners at 37.5%, and then 37.4% for Asian homeowners. But we see that again, this is that housing affordability challenges are not limited to any single group, and we see that in high-cost states, there might be a more significant portion of homeowners who are facing those housing cost burdens. And then we also take a look at the purchasing power of first-time home buyers in the report and see what the maximum price that they could actually afford to purchase. So in New York, we see that it was highest for white and Asian renters and what they could potentially purchase, which was again about $263,000 for Asian renters and $259,000 for white renters. So again, we see that this will vary by state, but interesting to take a look at. So again, this report that I work on is those factors, and then also looking further at the profile of home buyers and sellers data and breaking that down further by race and ethnicity. So just pulling out a couple of those highlights. Again, we saw that for multi-generational home buyers, they were mapped around 14% in the national report. We see that it is higher for racial minorities. When we look at this data, it was actually highest for Asian Pacific Islander buyers. That green is looking at the share of single female home buyers. So we do see that that was highest for Black and African American home buyers at 33%. And then that gray bar is looking at the share of first-time home buyers. So pretty different than what we see looking nationally, where there were all-time lows. We see that about 49% of Black and African American home buyers were first-time home buyers. It was 43% for Asian Pacific Islander buyers, and then also 41% for Hispanic Latino home buyers. So pretty significantly higher than what we see on a national level. And then looking at the last purple bar is looking at the share of recent home buyers who reported having student loan debt. So we do see that, again, that was highest for Black and African American home buyers. And then also looking at, again, those down payment sources, we do see some differences when we look by race and ethnicity. We see that, again, savings continues to be the top down payment source when we're looking on all buyers. We see some different trends, so looking at Black and African American home buyers, we see that they're the most likely to use a 401k or pension towards their down payment. Asian Pacific Islander home buyers were the most likely to maybe get a loan from a family member or friend. So looking forward to some of those trends, we're able to see, especially since these minority home buyers are more likely to be first-time home buyers. We're able to see some different ways that maybe these home buyers are able to put money towards their down payment. And then we also look at some different types of loans among our recent home buyers. So we see that Black and African American home buyers were the most likely to use FHA and also VA loans to work on payment amounts. Also see those vary by race and ethnicity, with Asian Pacific Islander buyers typically putting down a higher down payment amount. So again, that report is currently being updated by myself and my colleague. So this data is from that last report. Then I also want to share just a couple other charts from other survey reports. So this is from our home staging report. So again, yes.
It's just a little hard to hear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So again, this next report, okay. So this next report is looking at our home staging report. So this is a survey among our membership. So we asked about home staging among buyers agents and also sellers agents. And then we also have a couple what I call fun sections in the back. So we look at how TV shows might be influencing buyers in the home buying process, and then also looking at some buyer expectations among our members. So this first chart is looking at how home staging can impact the buyer's view of the house. So we see that the top factor was that home staging made it easier for a buyer to visualize the home as their own and as a future property for them. You also see it's kind of interesting that if the home is staged towards the buyer's taste, that could have a positive impact on the home's value. And then also, we see that buyers might be more willing to walk through a home if it's staged or they previously just saw online. And then we also look at on the seller side, so we ask among our buyer sellers agents if they stage all their homes, and if not, what are some of the home improvement items that they might suggest to those sellers. So we'll see that some of the top factors are just decluttering the home, having their entire home cleaned, improving curb appeal, and then also having professional photos done. And then again, like I mentioned, we have some of those fun sections in the back. So we also asked our members how TV shows that display the home buying process, how those are impacting their business. So we see that our members are saying that they might be setting unrealistic expectations for home buyers, maybe some increased expectations for how homes should look if they are only 5 see that it is leading to more educated home buyers and sellers. So also in the member profile, so we also offer over-sample reports. So the New York State Association did purchase one in the last year. So I did want to include some of that data just so you can see how New York State might be comparing to the national level of our membership. So we do see that in New York State, and sales agents are making up the largest share of our membership at 64% compared to just 16% for our national data. And you see that the share of brokers is higher at 22%, and the broker associates are making up about 16% of membership. And then looking at the typical experience of our membership, we see that the typical member nationally had about 12 years of experience. That was actually up to 13 in New York State. And then looking at that share that said they have 1 year or less of experience, we do see that it was at 12%. So there are some of those new members coming in. Looking at the number of transactions, we saw that in our national data, our membership was reported having about 10 transactions. Again, you know that this can vary. The median for New York State was 8. And then sales volume, see the typical sales volume nationally was at 2.5 million. We saw that it was at 2 million for New York. And then again, I mentioned this chart earlier, but looking at some of those factors, and again, this has the full list, and what were some of the most important factors that might be limiting potential clients from completing a transaction. We do see some differences here in New York. We see that lack of inventory was at the top at 42%, followed by housing affordability at 16%, and then also there was that higher expectation that mortgage rates might come down. So again, this is all from 2025. So I also just wanted to mention some of the other research data offerings that we have. So again, I mentioned existing home sales earlier. So we have that data on a monthly basis as well as pending home sales. We also have home prices at the metro level that is released on a quarterly basis. Housing affordability index is also on a monthly basis. We also have looking at housing shortage tracker. So again, have all of that on the housing statistics page. And then I also want to mention the Metro North Statistics dashboard that one of my colleagues has put together. So you're able to look at your particular metro area and see lots of different great data sources. So all of those different icons that you see will generate a report for you, looking at housing affordability, housing statistics, overall demographics, home buyer demographics on the metro level. So all of this is also available to you. So again, all those different economic conditions and home buyer profile, home ownership demographics. So lots of great data is available, especially for the Buffalo market. And we're also posting on social media about all of our different report releases. We also have a blog that our team is updating on a daily basis with lots of great information, looking further into some of those reports and data releases. So that is also available. But again, thank you for inviting me this morning and to be able to share just some of the data that our team is working on.
What's the silent generation?
So the acreage, it's just for you.
Anybody that would like to ask a question, we could go to the microphone so the room could hear, please. But Vietta's question was, what is the silent generation? Greatest generation.
Is that your generation? You're not silent or right?
How do you do? Anybody have questions?
I believe. I can speak loud enough. Okay. On one of your charts, you said the average first-time home buyer, or was it a median average age of the home buyer is 40?
Yep.
Was it a median or average?
It's a median and it's for first-time home buyers.
Right, and I
Yes.
believe the percentage of first-time home buyers, that's 28%?
It was 21%.
21?
Yes.
Wow.
Down even more. But even from last year, we had previously seen an all-time low, it was 24%, so continuing this year, we saw that drop even further.
So that impacts that first-time home buyer.
Yes.
Obviously, I bought my first home at 25 years old. So now it's up to 40 years old as a median age. And it's only 21% of the market. Wow, that's huge.
It is.
Yeah, we're.
My question is, first of all, thank you for coming here today, we really appreciate it. And did you come out of DC?
Yes, I did.
Then I'm close to the area, bless your heart. Probably on that boat.
Go closer to the microphone, Myra.
Am I on it?
Go closer to it.
Oh my gosh. Nobody ever told me I could do it. But my question is really legitimate, more about the surveys and where you get the data from. For instance, when you send them out to your NAR membership, what's the return?
So response rates have been very challenging, especially among our membership. For our member profile, we're around right under 5% in our latest survey. We have seen those going down. We've seen like over 6%, especially for our national survey, but yes, response rates are getting pretty hard for that. For our consumer survey, we have the actual numbers.
Well, I just wanted to know how the numbers now, we're taking a very small sampling of people's opinions.
So for our member profile, we send out a proportionate number of surveys based on state. So of our total sample, if we were to see 20% of all membership, they're getting 20% of that sample. So we're trying to do that. We also link the data back to that state level.
Okay, those are the questions, was do you reach out to consumers as well? Where do you get those kind of lists from?
So we work with a outside vendor to get those names of those recent home buyers and recent home sellers. So we work with them to, for them to send out our survey. So our home buyers and sellers survey, they're able to take it either by paper or also online. And then we get those responses back and do our analysis.
Is that a response?
I'm sorry.
Is that a better response? I
I
mean, I'm
think
just.
it might be even lower. So for the profiles home buyers and sellers, our response rate was 3.5% of our latest report. And also for those larger surveys, we do find a harder time getting the response rates back, just because we're asking a larger number of questions compared to some of our shorter surveys.
Thank you so much. So the two slides you had, and I just wanna say that hopefully they're accurate for the math that you have, but the fact that the Black and the Asian numbers have risen in homeownership and in the first-time buyer portion is amazing. And that, I think that will be a great wealth builder, but I think that if we look at this and we're not using these numbers as Margaret said, maybe we should all try to post some really cool numbers, because I think that if we answer the surveys, the numbers will just get better. But I just wanted to point out that that slide, I think, is phenomenal information.
Yes, so we're excited to be re-releasing that report. So we've been releasing the snapshot report since 2020. And again, my colleague and I are currently working on that report. This will be out by June.
Any other questions for Brandy? John, you have any words for us?
Thank you, Brandy. From all the way from Maryland up to wonderful Buffalo, and thank you, and really. She's coming back for the meatball brawl. She heard my meatballs are the best. I don't know, that's what she just told me. And she also said they do call it gravy in Maryland, right? First of all, on behalf of the leadership team, I want to thank everyone for coming. The slides and part of the video will be up online, so I know I saw some people taking some pictures of slides. At our next event, which is the broker event on May 6th, it'll be here. We will have two, for those brokers and managers that will be here, we will have two screens. It was just too late to get the other screens. I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't contributed to, let me back up. Brandy mentioned a series of reports that are on Realtor.org. This is your resource, this is your association. They do a plethora of surveys, reporting, charts, information to help you dive into your business. So I strongly suggest you participate, go in and do the research. Also RPR, which is a realtor program, has a ton of information, as well as the MLS system. We have a lot of information there as well. And so if you have any questions, the staff can help you maneuver those things. We do have a class in RPR, and the resources are invaluable for you as a member. We do, as I mentioned, the broker summit coming up on May 6th. Broker managers, we have some speakers, Sherry Chris coming in from NAR as well. 2 weeks ago, we had Colette from NAR talking about fair housing. Today, we're blessed with Brandy coming in, talking about the economic forecast. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to have Sherry Chris. Sherry Chris was the president and CEO of Better Homes and Gardens International, and she is working with NAR, reaching out to broker owners, managers, to understand, get a better feel for what NAR is providing for brokers. I would like to remind everyone, making investment in advocacy, RPAC, is very important. For years, NAR has lobbied, and I know some people think that's a bad word, our elected officials to help you in your business to protect homeowners. So we have a goal every year, and we've been fortunate to have made it the last 20 plus years. If you haven't contributed at least $10, $15, go on to our website, go to NAR, and you can see all of the successes, bills that we supported, bills that we defeated, that really affect you and your business. A lot of people also get a little queasy. I don't like that candidate. NAR supports candidates from both sides of the aisle that support our mission, our careers, your careers. Some are Democrats, some are Republicans. I don't know if there are any independents, there might be, but this is all about protecting you, protecting the homeowners. And the final thing I'd like to mention, two things. Always keep safety in the forefront. I know that we live in a beautiful area, but safety is paramount. We initiated a new program called Forewarn. That's where if you get a phone call or an email, you can actually put it into the app and it'll tell you who the other person is on the other end if they're real. It gives you a public records information on that phone number. And I know there are several people in this room who used it, and they were fortunate because they were scammed. So it's forewarned. Danielle and Scott are the point of contacts for that. So please, keep safety paramount. There was a murder of an agent maybe 10 years ago, and they just found out who did it. And it was, these things happen, they're real. And for some of the newer agents, we've had two, a mother and daughter separately that were abducted in Western New York. This is years ago. So this is very serious. Go back to your companies, review your safety procedures, managers, broker owners, talk to your agents about it, because we don't want anything like that to happen. Staff and I are always here. I want to thank the staff there in the back. They do a phenomenal job. And oh yeah, RPAC. When is that?
Grand Lady is.
Grand Lady? What's the date? So we have an RPAC fundraiser coming up. It's on the Grand Lady. It is, we'll have, what is it called there? Oh, look at that.
Look at Margaret coming in.
You know, Margaret, you're the best. So, the 24th of June, it's a sunset cruise. We'll have some baskets there. There's a bar, some great food, some great camaraderie. And your contribution of $75 will go towards RPAC. And it's a great event. A lot of the leadership will be there. You can talk to them about getting involved. If you want to really get engaged, we have a ton of different committees. One of my favorite committees is Agents Day. Anybody here from Agents Day? I know we have a few people. So get involved with that. AI. How many people use ChatGPT or any of the other programs? Tacos and tech. Can't get any better than that. Who doesn't like tacos? May 5th. It's in the training room. We have some experts that will be talking about AI and how to use it, how to protect yourself. May 5th. All this is on your member portal. So if you go to your member portal, which you should do at least once a week, you can see your license, when it's going to expire, you want to contribute to RPAC, you want to sign up for classes. Let's Save Seminar. How many people know that there's some new laws in New York State and Buffalo, Western New York is affected? Let's Save Seminar coming up on May 7th. We have people from the county, environmental, Erie County, and Department of Commencement Inspections. It's a very serious issue, and unfortunately it still exists in our areas. Regional meetings, North Towns, for those people that live up this way at the Niagara Falls Country Club, that will be on May 29th. Myself and Lori will be speaking along with several of the staff. For South Towns people, it'll be on May 30th. And again, if you want to hear me twice, you can come down to that. I do want to mention that, we talk about housing, and right now inventory is approximately 6.5 weeks of supply. In a ideal market, we want to be at 6 months. And so it is somewhat challenging. It's not going to change overnight. This is we're probably 12 to 14 million homes short of supply. Globally, there are over 3 billion people that are living in a homeless or less than desirable housing. And housing is very important, and because it does a lot of different things to help build people up. And so, again, these reports are on NAR. The final thing I do want to also, and I'll end up there and I'll take any questions, is Fair housing is real. For those individuals that have not seen any clips on Long Island Divided, you need to watch it. The federal government, the state, local entities are sending out testers. They're here in Western New York, they're out through all of New York. I'll give you a quick synopsis. There was a 3-year undercover study in Long Island, and agents lost licenses, people were fined. And the 2 biggest violations, obviously, there was no steering, but the second one right behind it is source of income. The best advice I could give any agent, leave your opinion in your car. So if they need information about schools, direct them where to go to get a report on schools. If they want information about crime, send them to the local police department. Don't say things like, oh, I wouldn't ride my bike here at night. Or maybe you should come here at 11 o'clock at night and see what happens. Or, no, my kids, I wouldn't send my kids to this school. Very innocent, these things happen, it's wrong. So, we have some information on our website about fair housing. We have a handout at the office. Please, people talk about it affects generational wealth. That's only one effect. It's education, generation opportunity, generation health. When someone is put in an area intentionally because you think that's where they want to live, yes, it does affect the wealth component, but those opportunities, those kids that grow up there in certain areas have a hard time getting out. And I'll give you one good example. I'm originally from Brooklyn, if you couldn't tell. I'm a Purple Eagle, went to Niagara University, retired Army. I grew up in an area called East New York. East New York, Brooklyn. Back in the late 50s, redlining and steering was happening. Agents would walk black families in the neighborhood, scare the white families, buy the properties at a discount, and then sell them for a higher price to the minorities. All of that is still having an effect on families today, and this was in the late 50s and 60s when I was growing up. I'm telling you, it's wrong and it's serious. We have had a ton of material on it. We'll probably do another seminar before the end of the year. That's how serious it is. Myself and my staff are here to answer any questions. We appreciate your membership. This is your association. We have a great leadership team here, and they're here serving you as well. Any questions or comments? I'm an open book.
Ignoring me, I'm your answer.
I didn't hear you. I didn't see you waving your hand, Margaret.
I just want to mention, I think you can hear me. Now, back to the deleting, which I deleted all those surveys. I don't have to do that anymore. Okay, I said that I deleted surveys because I get them from everybody, but I won't do that anymore for any app because I want better information. But what I want to not to do is delete what you just got today from NYSHA legal update. This is important because it won't be the first time that the U.S. federal government comes out with one rule and New York has another rule. And Anthony Gatto was making it very clear to us that when HUD said we can talk about school districts and we can talk about, I think about it, dear colleague, for the quality of schools and neighborhood crimes, we can talk about it came out of HUD. New York State, and we are New York State licensees, we cannot talk about crime and we cannot talk about school districts that we compare or anything. So he said right now, there's two contradictory letters. People really believe what comes out of HUD. But we gotta remember we're New York licensees, and because I actually read this, instead of deleting, which I do, and I happen to teach this in one course, and I don't want you to think that I don't know what I'm talking about. But please, just read this and keep it talking and share it with everyone you touch
back at your offices, because we're gonna get two different messages, and all of a sudden, someone's gonna get slammed with something, but it's not gonna be applicable to your New York licensee. That's all I wanted to say, it's going along with everything else you were saying.
Thank you, Margaret. And it is important, we do follow New York State law, which trumps federal right now. Anthony Gatto, for those that don't know, is the chief legal counsel for the state association. And so, he's been with the association at least 15, maybe 20 years, a little longer. And so he's well versed. Read those updates, respond to the call for actions that come out from the state and national. Your involvement, even in the surveys that Brandy was mentioning, is vital. It takes a minute, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, participate. Any other comments or questions? Thank you for coming, and go Sabres on Sunday. Thank you.